Picture this. You're standing barefoot in a stone courtyard in ancient Sparta. Above you, the city is eerily quiet. Too quiet. 3 days ago, your home burned to ashes. Your children, they're already dead. The march is over. The shouting stopped hours ago. But now, something far worse is coming. And before this video ends, you'll discover why what happened to these women was more terrifying than any battlefield massacre. Stay till the end, because the final twist will make you question everything you thought you knew about ancient Sparta. 31 women stand beside you in perfect rows. Not chained, not closely guarded, just counted like livestock. A man approaches from the far end of the courtyard, his crimson cloak announcing his authority before his voice ever does. When he speaks, his Greek is sharp enough to cut words down to bone. You are no longer Athenians, he says. You are no longer wives. Everything you were is finished. Each sentence lands with the precision of a blade that leaves no visible wound. Her name is Molina. She doesn't move. She's already learned that movement attracts attention in Sparta. And in Sparta, attention is never, ever a gift. Here's what nobody tells you about ancient warfare. The real horror isn't the battle. It's what comes after. These women now belong to the state. Not as common slaves. No, slaves serve with their hands. These women, they'll serve very differently. Drop a comment right now if you think you could survive what's coming next. Because I guarantee, it's worse than you're imagining. The official speaks of distribution, of the city's needs, of functions. His words are administrative, almost neutral, as if he's discussing the movement of grain, not the erasure of human lives. And in that moment, Molina understands something essential. The true horror isn't immediate violence. It's the system that replaces it. A machine that requires no anger, no sadism. Just rules. Just records. Just decisions made far from the faces of those who suffer them. Sparta doesn't scream. Sparta classifies. The man turns and walks away without waiting for acknowledgement. The silence thickens like blood and water. Spartan women step forward and begin separating the group with calm efficiency. Molina feels herself crossing an invisible threshold. Not into chaos, but into something far worse. A machine that already knows exactly what to do with her. No voices are raised. They don't need to be. The women are divided into equal groups of 8 and led toward different buildings lining the courtyard. Molina walks with her eyes lowered, counting her steps, forcing her thoughts into order. In Sparta, thinking too much is a dangerous luxury. The building is austere. Bare stone. No ornament. No symbol. Inside, the air is cool and smells faintly of clean water. There are no chains. No screams. And somehow, that absence unsettles her more than either would have. A woman waits beside a stone table. Her face shows neither curiosity nor cruelty. Only function. When she speaks, her tone carries no emotion. It's the voice of someone who has repeated the same task too many times to feel anything anymore. Molina understands without being told. Comply before being asked. She's already seen how this place works. Resistance doesn't halt the process. It only slows it and makes it more uncomfortable. Questions come. Not inquisitive questions. Technical ones. Data is recorded. Cycles are noted. Backgrounds are reduced to silent numbers on wax tablets. Molina answers without protest because she's already understood something crucial. Here, neither consent nor resistance is required. Only cooperation. When the tablet fills with markings, something final has occurred. She hasn't been judged. She hasn't been condemned. She's been classified. If you're still watching, hit that subscribe button, because what happens next reveals the darkest secret of Spartan society that historians rarely discuss. That night, food and water are brought. Enough. Carefully measured. Molina notices the precision and understands something more about the system enclosing her. This isn't careless cruelty. It's selective care. What is useful is preserved. Everything else is expendable. Sparta doesn't waste resources. And now she's one of them. As she lies awake, memories intrude uninvited. 72 hours ago, she was the wife of Hippocrates, an Athenian strategist. Mistress of an orderly household. Mother of 2 children who now exist only as an unbearable absence. That life feels distant, as if it belonged to someone else. Here, her name barely matters. What matters is what she represents, what she can offer, what she can produce. To understand what's about to happen to Molina, we need to step backward in time. Sparta wasn't born an anomaly. It became one through accumulated decisions made under pressure, justified by fear, refined by generations who learned to live without alternatives. Centuries earlier, Sparta conquered fertile land but couldn't govern without constant anxiety. The subjugated population was large, persistent, impossible to absorb. They lived beside their conquerors, working the soil, preserving memory and resentment. From that moment, the city learned a lesson that would define it forever. Survival would depend on control, not consensus, not persuasion. Control. This need reshaped every aspect of Spartan life. Childhood ceased to be a space of protection and became a phase of preparation. Family yielded to the collective. Affection became a liability. The body ceased to belong to the individual. It became a resource managed by the city. Over time, that coherence was praised as virtue. Spartans learned not to doubt, not to question, not to require explanation. And when a practice becomes habit, it stops appearing cruel. It simply is. The training Sparta imposed on its children sought more than strong bodies. It sought unwavering minds. From early childhood, obedience was taught without question, endurance without complaint. This wasn't punishment. It was conditioning. Every deprivation, every test was designed to erase hesitation. Over time, this produced men who required no explicit orders. They knew what was expected because the system had replaced morality itself. And in the shadow of this training existed a final stage, reserved for those who had already proven they could act without internal restraint. It was never discussed openly, only hinted at through euphemism, as if naming it directly might fracture the order it upheld. Comment below if you think this system sounds familiar to anything in modern society. The parallels might shock you. At dawn, Molina wakes before anyone calls for her. Light enters through a narrow opening high in the wall. It offers no view of the outside. Sparta offers no views, only functions. The questions continue. They're technical. Data is recorded. When the wax tablet fills with markings once more, Molina senses that something final has occurred. She's been classified for a domestic assignment. Not as an equal, not as a guest. As part of a secondary household structure designed to fulfill a specific need of the state. When a Spartan woman approaches and instructs her to follow, Molina rises immediately. She's learned the most important rule of this place. Those who hesitate are lost. As she walks, she makes a decision so small it barely registers as thought. Sparta may control her body, her time, her immediate future, but it will not fully control her mind. That fragile decision becomes her first act of resistance. The woman who enters doesn't present herself as a guard or caretaker. She presents herself as an intermediary. Her name is Gorgo. She offers no comfort, only information. In Sparta, that's the closest thing to courtesy. Gorgo explains in short, measured sentences. The evaluations are complete. Molina has been deemed suitable for a domestic assignment, designed to fulfill a specific need of the state. If you cooperate, you will live, Gorgo says plainly. If you don't, you will be reassigned. There's no threat in her voice, only fact. In that moment, Molina realizes something unsettling. Spartan women don't see themselves as victims. They don't see themselves as oppressors. They see themselves as necessary. The man waiting in the courtyard stands with a stillness that isn't passive, but alert. His name is Cleomenes. He's a full citizen, someone who has endured every stage of the system and survived. In Sparta, that alone confers power. Cleomenes speaks without warmth. He doesn't mention feelings or expectations. He speaks of continuity, inheritance, domestic stability. Molina answers carefully, neither submissive nor defiant. She's learned that extremes invite suspicion. In the days that follow, the nights are predictable, mechanical, but the days are not. Cleomenes returns at irregular hours. He speaks not of emotions, but of tactics, harvests. The martial verses Sparta permits, as its only poetry. At first, Molina listens in silence. Then, cautiously, she begins to ask questions. Not challenges. Details. Practical clarifications. Cleomenes responds with rigidity at first, then with something else. Interest. Speaking with her doesn't require the mask he wears among other men. Molina doesn't count. She's foreign. She's property. And therefore, paradoxically, she's safe. That safety becomes dangerous. The summons arrives without warning. Two men escort Molina through streets she recognizes through repetition. Sparta doesn't change. That's its promise and its threat. The chamber where the Ephors wait is austere, even by Spartan standards. 5 seats arranged in a semicircle. One opposite them, reserved for those who must answer. The Ephors speak with the same tone they'd use to discuss any civic matter. They note that time is passing, that expected results haven't appeared. Then they mention a request. A name whispered only in silence. Lysander. They don't explain who he is. The weight of the name makes its significance clear. Pause and leave a comment. Do you think Molina should accept or refuse? Your answer might reveal more about you than you think. For the first time since arriving in Sparta, Molina is offered what they call a choice. Accept and assume the consequences. Refuse and accelerate the demands placed on her current assignment. This isn't a moral decision. It's a transfer of responsibility. Whatever happens, the city will remain blameless. Molina recognizes the trap immediately. There's no real choice. Both paths lead to loss, only by different routes. But she also recognizes something else. The fact that she's been consulted at all means her status has shifted. She's no longer entirely expendable. She answers without raising her voice. She chooses to remain where she is. The Ephors nod as if this response confirms an expectation. Then she's dismissed. No ceremony. No farewell. That night, when Molina returns, she knows the margin for error has shrunk. Her survival no longer depends solely on obedience. It depends on anticipation. When Cleomenes enters, she notices a change in him. Unease. He's been informed. Not of everything, but enough. The margin has narrowed, he says. The city doesn't wait forever. That night, for the first time since arriving in Sparta, Molina acts differently. Not in submission, but in calculated participation. She understands with brutal clarity that her body has become her argument, and delaying that argument would be surrender. The days that follow tighten into a monitored routine. Consultations. Adjustments. Recommendations delivered as technical instruction. Molina follows each precisely, not from blind obedience, but because she understands that every action is evidence. Cleomenes begins to change in ways others notice. He defends his investment using the language the system respects. Efficiency, resources, future value. He doesn't speak of Molina as a person. He speaks of her as an asset. The protection is imperfect, but it's real. Here's the truth historians don't want you to think about. Sparta's system worked not because it was cruel, but because it was efficient. It didn't require monsters. It required cooperation. And that's what makes it truly terrifying. These women weren't victims of individual evil. They were casualties of a machine that ran on logic, not hatred. A system where everyone played their part. Where resistance wasn't crushed, it was simply made pointless. Molina survived by learning to think like the system without becoming it. But the question that should haunt us is this. How many systems today operate on the same principle? How many of us are Molina? And how many are the Ephors, convinced we're just doing what's necessary? If this video made you uncomfortable, good. That means you're paying attention. Subscribe to Ancient Grim History for more stories that reveal the darkness lurking in civilization's foundations. Drop a comment with your thoughts, especially if you disagreed with anything I said. Because the real horror of history isn't that it happened. It's that it keeps happening. We just call it something else.